Hello, and welcome back to Storytime Saturday. And I was just giving a little bit of commentary on the book that we just read. So this is part 2. I hope you came back to join me for a little bit of real life story time. I was talking about how my younger sister and I were at the Seattle Center. Probably my younger brother too. They're just like 3 years apart, and my younger sister is 8 years younger than me, and my brother's 10 years younger. And so I was watching them, and we were at the Seattle Center, and in the story Corduroy that we just read, there was a scene or a part of the story where he was discovering the escalator, like the floor was moving beneath him. And my sister, who was so young, she was, very, probably toddler, late toddler maybe. And in the Seattle Center, there's an escalator that went to the mezzanine or whatever. And she started playing around on it while I was probably chasing after my younger brother. And she found that if she's holding on to the rubber part, of the railing, that all of a sudden it started to carry her up and away. And even so far as, I think what I started to do was try to, the way I recollect it is that, there's side-by-side escalators, and one's going up and one's going down. And I think that she was on the down escalator, but the rubber part was going up, if that makes sense. Because I remember trying to run up the escalator to reach her because she had gotten that far already holding on. And I couldn't reach her. I mean, because I felt like I was, I was stuck kind of. I wasn't able to go up as fast as the other part was moving up. So it might have been the down escalator is what I'm recollecting. And so she got carried up until she couldn't hold on anymore. And this crowd of people had formed at the bottom of the escalator, and they were watching. But they were watching, but kind of from a distance. And so miraculously, when she fell and I was on the escalator heading up, or at least running up the escalator, I had gotten that far, maybe trying to run down is what it was. Yeah, she fell, and I remember she was falling head first. And somehow this man appeared in the middle of the crowd where there had been nobody before, and caught her by her feet, and just before her head hit the ground. So that is a story that I'll never not think about when we talk about escalators. Especially, but I often, remind myself of how miracles do happen. And I believe that must have been an angel. I know that, there's scripture that says that God has basically allowed angels to protect us in certain situations. I'd like to find that scripture because, I know sometimes we have this picture of angels and we think, oh, well, there's no real angels and devils. I mean, obviously we won't get into that discussion, but but the Bible does talk about angels actually, and how God has put there are angels that he's put in that role that we wouldn't, to help us not to cast your foot against a stone or something like that. I'll find that scripture because I don't like misquoting them. But yeah, so isn't that amazing? And I got to experience, because basically by the time I got there, the guy kind of handed my sister over to me and told me to be careful. And I felt like he had disappeared at that point. I looked to where he had left, and I didn't see any trace of him. And I thought, I just encountered an angel. I mean, he obviously saved my sister in that circumstance. So, yeah, that's one part of the commentary on Corduroy's story, which didn't have much to do with the story, except that, Corduroy found himself on this escalator he had never been on and realized it was just going to take him up. And then when he got, taken back by the night watchman to the toy department on the shelf where he had been looked at by the girl the day before, even though he thought, wow, this is such a big palace-looking place, I think I wanted to explore this. But at the end, he got brought home to this nice little small room that the girl took him and made a home for him, and he knew he'd always wanted a home. And I just thought that was such a sweet, ending and moral to the story, and how, he said, I know I've always wanted a home, and I've always, and this must be a friend. And obviously, he's a stuffed animal. So maybe you want to write in the comments if you've ever had stuffed animal friends. I had quite a few. I had a whole collection, and I kept them. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I had a hard time letting them go because they're pretty shabby and raggedy. And I'm like, will my grandchildren, even want these? But yeah, I have lots of, memories. I had my own schoolroom of stuffed animals. I put them in their little chairs, and I had a little space underneath the stairs in our basement when I first moved to Seattle, and I was about 6 years old. And I would be the teacher reading them stories. So from that early age, I loved to read stories aloud. I loved to experience it as well. In class, we would have that at that stage, and I wanted to do that so badly. So I'm glad that I have a place as my children grew out of it, one by one. I mean, I only had 2 children, but yeah, I milked the mother role for reading aloud to my children for a long time. And I worked with kids from the time my son was in kindergarten until he almost graduated from high school, doing the same thing. Not just reading to them, but helping them to learn to read for themselves. But yeah, so I really enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy listening. So I'm so glad that you have joined me for another Storytime Saturday. And with no further ado, I will see you on Thank God It's Sunday. Good night.